Welcome, Aries, to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week commencing the 27th of April for the ascendant, the sun, or the moon. Going to share the big theme of the week ahead, first of all, Aries. Then on screen, your event chart. Right at the beginning of the week always provides an influential backdrop. I'll then go through each of those influences frame by frame to give you a clear picture of what you can expect by the end of the video in terms of your energy, work, relationships, or finances. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundel. A very warm welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please do so now to help it to continue to thrive. But please also click or tap the bell notification symbol. There is a real contrast to the week ahead. There can be some really glittering conversations, really very buzzy, but also some deep consideration about finances. On the screen now is your event chart. And over the weekend, Aries, we did have a square, one of astrology's most powerful ones, between the sun in the earthy, pragmatic Taurus, very much about your life foundations, security, but everyday money, and Pluto, the planet of transformation, in a part of your chart which is much more idealistic, but can be to do with the future. And if talking to someone over the weekend, you realize that you and they are not aligned, perhaps around your values, maybe around money, or possibly about whether you're matched up for that long-term project or plan, there may have been quite the standoff, and that could still be playing out as we go into this week, but it may not reach a climax fully until we get to the full moon on the 1st of May, which is in the intense Scorpio, a flower moon. And I'll share more about that shortly. So you could come into this week just processing some kind of big battle of wills. But also, as we come into this week, Uranus has returned to Gemini. It did have that brief visit last year for 4 months, but we have Venus in the sign too. Venus is very vivacious in Gemini, can be flirty, but she's forging a beautiful link to Neptune in your sign. Neptune in your sign is giving you some ideas of perhaps remodeling your personal identity, the way you dress. But if there is someone you've been talking to who really is witty, but also very alluring, that aspect between them at the start of this week can magnify your interest hugely. But as Venus moves on in the week, she comes into an exact trine with Pluto. Now, when Venus and Pluto are in aspect, it can create obsession. However, because they're in a lovely enabling trine, I think if you have a conversation where someone's values do align with yours, you find them very easy to be with, then that relationship can take on a deeper, almost fated connection. It's equally possible that you feel that you've kind of met that person before, and perhaps it has some kind of karmic significance. But also, what we have as Venus moves on is she forges a very stable link with Saturn in your sign. So, if there is a relationship in your world that actually is very solid, maybe some good friends, as the week goes on, I feel that as Venus applies in a tighter way to Saturn, it really can be a chance to celebrate those involvements. And that's lovely. Also, as a counterpoint to the tension of the Sun and Pluto square, Mercury in your sign, initially at the start of the week, squares off with Jupiter. But this is a square which has a much more up vibration. But it could, because of Jupiter being in the fourth house and about home and family, see you take the initiative around perhaps a do-it-yourself job for yourself or your partner, or perhaps for someone in your clan, where you make a commitment to helping them, but your enthusiasm could mean that actually you end up promising to do more than after thinking about it you really should have done. So just temper that enthusiasm a little bit. But as the week goes on, the moon moves forwards, and then by Friday, it's into the sign of Scorpio. But from a technical viewpoint, the moon is in its full in Scorpio, FALL, and it's not a great place for it to be. It can make us a bit nervous, but it can also be about shared resources and finances and a long-term plan. And because of the opposition to the sun in the second house of everyday money, that big standoff at the start of the week or over last weekend could come back more sharply into focus because the full moon is actually broadly in a T square with the position of Pluto. And maybe because the Scorpio moon can arouse some issues that have been hidden or shielded or not quite shared, perhaps as openly as they could be, if you are trying to balance the ins and outs of your situation and work with someone who sees things very, very differently to you, that of course can cause some tension. But right at the end of this week, Aries, Mercury, the planet of communication, moves to join up with the Sun in Taurus. And you know, I actually think that can be very helpful because Mercury in Taurus can be very pragmatic. Its thinking is not so impulsive, it's more grounded. So it help or will help you just to perhaps make a budget, think about what someone has said, assess information, and just approach things in a little bit more of a clear but functional way. Now, I'm going to summarize those four areas: energy, work, relationships, and finances next. But just to say, I've slashed the price of my personal horoscope reports. You can now order one but get three. So three for the price of one. The one you pay for is your life roadmap report, which helps us to understand the patterns that are played out in our lives so far, but also get a much more intimate understanding of who we are and how we can work with those energies better future forwards. The two free charts are your 12 months forecast, totally unique to your situation, but also your draconic or soul karmic chart. So that's three for the price of one. Please see below for more. Why? Because I know people are feeling the pinch, but also I'm really passionate about sharing natal astrology with more and more people. Now, if you've yet to watch your May monthly forecast, Aries, that's on the screen now. If you've yet to watch your Uranus into Gemini 1 year forecast, that's on the screen now. If you've yet to sign up for your free daily horoscope fired to your device each morning for your early day celestial pit stop, please take advantage of that below. And if you'd like to work with me one-to-one, please also check out my testimonials. So when it comes to your financial situation, I feel that something that isn't quite right will need some attention. There could be a revelation, but it may be for the best if it does come into the open. But really, it's not that your finances per se are not good. It may be where you're connected or dependent on another person, or they see things very differently to you. So it's more about the politics than the cash flow itself, but that will need some attention. When it comes to your interaction with people and your ideas, which can be brilliant for your work, I think there's a lot to like about this week. And if there are people that you're sharing those with that are receptive to what you have to say, I think you have every right to be very optimistic about what this week can bring. In terms of your neat energy, with Saturn continuing in your first house over the next 2 years, it's clear that there's only so much vitality any of us can have. The sign of Aries is very much about the body, and particularly for you, the first house. So you may just be tempted to do quite a lot with this Gemini influences, which are very sparkly, but you may need to just pick what really feels right. And in terms of romance, well, I feel that if you are finding someone both mentally stimulating but also hugely attractive, a date is entirely possible. But if you have any kind of psychic or perceptive capabilities, just know that Neptune's link to Uranus and Venus can help you to really decipher who can be good for you. It's been a real pleasure being with you, Aries. Have a great week and look forward to seeing you again soon.